listening to CaveRadioBroadcasting.com. The words and opinions you are about to hear are of the hosts and do not reflect the management of CaveRadioBroadcasting.com.
Howard, you've got the intro on this, right? I think that is a yes.
Good afternoon and welcome to Down the Rabbit Hole. Today is Thursday, May 24th, year of our Lord 2018. You're listening to a Gen Pop Media production.
So we're going to have a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
Because, is my mic on?
Oh, there you go. Get
It
closer.
is.
Oh, yeah.
It is just because you made me turn your headphones down so low.
Because we're going to have a challenge here. And here's what it is. Because we're going to have some people that still believe 19 guys in caves did 9/11. And then we're going to also have an audience that has peeled the last layer of the onion and everything in between. So it's going to take a little fine footstepping for us to get through this cleanly. But I totally broke your monologue. So what's the rest of our intro?
Basically, the rest of our intro is we are broadcasting live from the palatial CRB radio studios.
He's not the best color man for nothing.
That's right. In picturesque downtown Redford. The main thing, and who's...
Oh, I wish I would have remembered to give a warning about that before the show.
Yeah. Sorry, as I have the program director texting me and telling me things as I'm doing the intro. Thank you, Dan, for piping in. I don't even know where we were at. So, yeah, the whole idea behind this is to get you to bring awareness that if things don't seem right, it's probably because they're not right. But what's really important is we don't want you to carry any of our mistakes forward. We're just bringing up points of conversation. Please do your own research. If you find something that we've said incorrectly, which there will be a correction here in a few minutes on something we were mistaken about last week, just feel free to bring it up to us. Go to the website, drop us a line, give us an email, log in on Facebook, whatever you want to do. Let us know, because we're here. We are trying to just get to the truth. We have no stake in what the truth actually is.
We have no idea what we're talking about.
Sometimes
not
that's
all
true.
of us.
Yeah.
In case you're just meeting us or seeing us for the first time, let's kind of do some formal introductions. Now, you just heard Howard speaking.
Yeah, I'm off camera right now as we work on the video portion of our broadcast.
He is the bus driver of the show, the man that rode up in a Harley with tattoos, and I've got a biker story later if you're interested. This is Dave DiBiase, just joining us for the first time. Now, Teresa, will you give us your full name and then give us something we can call you that is under, say, 10 syllables?
Well, that's a little bit of a trick, but I'll settle for Savaggio.
Savaggio?
Yes.
So you just want us to call you Savaggio?
Oh, Teresa or just Savaggio is fine.
Does anyone ever call you TMC?
Yes.
All right, I think I might adopt that one if you don't mind, unless that's like something private with your husband. Yeah, I don't want to do that, but thanks for joining us. I'm Dave Hooper. Mr. Tony Domas, say hello. And
hello.
Jay.
Hello.
Sitting there, and behind the camera is Elijah. And what's that thing we're hearing in the background?
It's the broadcast delayed on the. He's figuring it out.
Volume down on that.
It'll go away.
It's
He's
me trying to figure out what Dan told me is wrong with the broadcast.
Okay. Are we okay to continue?
Depends on what audio you want, because it looks like the audio reset, and I need to go offline to reset it and come back on. So that's totally your call. We can go with camera audio like the first hour of last week.
Well, let's just keep talking, and whatever happens, happens. So
fair enough.
This is Down the Rabbit Hole, not the conventional hole. It is many slogans to the show. One of them is, it's an Ephesians 5:11 operation. Go figure out what that means. So this is actually our second live stream show. You guys know what show overall we're on? Any wild guesses?
The number? Approaching, I'm guessing.
I will buy a beer for the best guess.
We've got to be approaching a couple hundred, aren't we? Or are we beyond that?
Guess?
I would say 200.
Okay. This is ridiculous. It's 129th. So we actually literally, I think we had about 125 practice broadcasts, and now we've put some
125 practice. That's a lot of practice.
Literally.
Yeah. That's 250 hours worth of practice.
Which is,
And we need a lot
now
more.
we still got a couple more irons to iron
Should
out,
get it by
like
now.
turning our phones off before the show begins off of Honda Buzz.
When that's the only thing you have to do, it's easy to take care of.
But we were actually doing some things to increase to we're getting onto new platforms and things like that. So I know we're going to have people listening from different places. Actually, we could even say it's a global show. In the immortal words of Matt Dillon from Singles, we are huge in Belgium. Maybe not in Belgium, but we actually are big in the Netherlands. And I know there are friends at Langley, because we can see the little IP dots on our software here. So they're always listening in, which I always just think is very interesting. And actually, I'm going to say something to you guys listening in. Think about what you're doing. Seriously, think about what you're doing. Because if you're working to subvert the truth, shame on you. If you're working to subvert a nation, you're playing with fire. And if you're subverting the word of God, then heaven help you. So we cover everything on this show. We're all here because we discovered something along the way in our lives. It is not something that was spread from one person to another. This is something that we've sort of come to a conclusion on, because I think one common denominator of the people in this room is, I think, open-minded. We range from all sides of the track, from college-educated to not, from motorcycle gang members to not, to living in the city of Detroit to not, and I could go on and on and on. And we try and bring all viewpoints. Think of us as some friends in your living room having a conversation. Not a regular conversation, because you know what? We can get those anywhere. And believe me, I've stood around enough kegs in my life to know what those conversations are. We talk about the things that we all secretly ponder at night. The things that, things like science, real history, archaeology, God, conspiracies, aliens, space, quantum physics, angels, demons, the devil, genetic biology, et cetera, et cetera. The things that, for some reason, we feel uncomfortable bringing up in public, which I think the people in this room might understand that if that is something that describes you, understand that there's a little, here comes another buzzword, there's a little brainwashing at work, at least a little working on you. Each week, we try and paint a dot. If you think of, if anyone's an artist here and understands pointillism, yes, if you've ever done like a color by numbers, you put a color down, you got one dot. You still don't know what the picture is. It's just a dot. If you only listen to one show, you'll just have a dot. That's it. But as the picture starts getting filled in with more dots, might be very, very confusing at first. And you don't know how all these dots, what picture this thing forms. But over time, a picture does form. And I think, as speaking for everybody here, that most of us have put enough dots, not all of them, but have put enough dots together where a picture emerged that literally changed our life. Am I wrong in saying that?
No,
that's
I
true.
agree.
Okay.
No.
So it is a process. It is not an event. For me, it took a long time just to get enough of the picture painted so I could see roughly what it is we were dealing with. Took close to a year. And this was full-time research. I put off starting my company, which my ex was not very happy about, which I totally understand. But when there's something inside of you, it almost like there was an obsession. And has anyone here thought that they were crazy at any point?
I feel like I'm obsessed with finding, the information for whatever topic I'm really interested in finding the truth about. I can't stop and just shut it off and go to sleep at night.
I tried to do that myself, like turning this, because what began for me in February of 2011 started to create so many questions that I questioned my own sanity for a while. I did. And I think if you are a logical person, you should consider all possibilities, and that was one of them. Now, I don't know if a sane person can question his sanity. That's a philosophical discussion we will not be having anytime soon. But
why would you question your sanity?
In my case,
what specifically do you think would make you, just because you're obsessed with researching, or what?
Well, my particular story of why I questioned it's tied to a couple things. First, February 14th of 2011, something got me to look into 9/11. This is 10 years after it happened. We know where that led to. It ultimately led to me making a movie about it, The Anatomy of a Great Deception. Mm-hmm. Long before that, beginning that very night, I was coming out of my little research room and giving updates to Betsy, my ex now, but mother of my son, and also her mother was there. Now, this would continue, and poor Betsy, she was pregnant 7 months with our son that was due, and I'm waking her up at 3 o'clock in the morning to tell her,
look what I found.
Yeah, did you know that the Central Intelligence Agency uses MK Ultra? Okay, not a great time in our relationship, and I made that extra hard.
Well, there's probably nothing you were going to do at that time to be good anyway, just because of the situation.
Well, look, part of it is, I was about to start a business. We had some clients we were going to put, and the idea is open to the world. If you want it, it's still out there. I haven't seen anyone do it. We're going to be putting these massive billboards on the roofs of warehouses in the landing paths of airports. And it's just untapped eyeballs. And I was living in Chicago and Florida at the time, and just coming into O'Hare alone, you've got 90 million passengers a year. You walk into a warehouse owner, say, hey, can I put something on your roof? It'll never bug you, and here's $1,000. And then AT&T is willing to pay $20,000 for it. So I was very excited about this business. It was getting warm, and then the 9/11 thing hit, and my life has never been the same. So that was definitely stressful. But you asked about wondering if you're crazy.
Right.
So there are a couple events that happened. And I know people listening that if you've started to open your eyes, you've gone through something like this. And for me, it started, like, I kept wanting to have Betsy look into this. I'm like, just look into it. Just look into 9/11. Once you see it with your own eyes, it's one of those things. Once you see it with your own eyes, it's like your heart, your heart, no matter what the people on television tell you, you realize, oh my gosh, there is just something incredibly wrong here. So she did some research, and she actually researched therapists. And I actually think this was from God. We go to and I'm totally open. We go to the therapist, and to amalgamate a long story into 5 seconds, the therapist was like, I actually think 9/11 was an inside job as well. Okay, wow. One for the searching for the truth. Nonetheless, the 9/11 search was taking me into a lot of other things. Oh my God, our Federal Reserve isn't federal. It's owned by private families that, at the end of the day, praise Lucifer. I mean, these are crazy kind of things to be. This is so far away from the reality that I grew up thinking. And at times I had to take breaks because I'm like, this is too much. Like, the cognitive dissonance in my own head was too much. I went through a paranoid phase for a few weeks. And I don't even know if it was true paranoia, because if they really are, I don't know I think you've been ghost gang stalked before. I've had strange things happen.
Yeah,
by the way, if you do feel like there are people following you, just wink at them, blow them a kiss, and it's over. And the gig is up for them. They will then be moving on to level B, and we'll teach you about that later. So I'm starting to, when you start to go down this path, you don't fit in at parties anymore like you used to. And there's this desire you've got to talk about this with somebody. And that wasn't happening at home. And so I'm sitting there questioning, maybe I'm just not looking at this properly. So I decided I'm going to go look, and I was doing my research online. So I decided to go look at the mother of all conspiracies. Another buzzword. I looked into the whole alien thing because, okay, this one, like, before I looked at it, I was like, well, I'm sure there's no way that 9/11 and alien. We can't have two unbelievable conspiracies going on. And after spending about 3 or 4 days listening to over, I'm going to say 400 or 500 pilots, generals, air traffic controllers, presidents, etc., credible people.
The
with
disclosure
stars.
hearing. Yeah.
Well, the Stephen Greer disclosure. I mean, this is actually a much bigger movement than even 9/11. And I'm now thinking, oh my gosh, aliens are visiting the planet. And that's when I said, okay, that's when I thought I'm going insane. And I had to shut it down for a few months. And every time I would try to do it, something would, well, what I think it is literally was God would just go back into it. And finally I gave up fighting, trying to go into it, and just decided to try and just dove in, do your best to become an expert. It's something in which there is no experts on earth about this. None. One thing you'll hear Howard say in the intro is, listen to us, but don't believe everything we say. Don't trust any one source blindly. Go find hundreds of sources. Now, we all watch mainstream news, and I'm telling you, every channel on your cable selection, all of them are controlled by 5 people at the end of the day. Is it so hard to think that maybe they coordinate on a couple things and maybe set some parameters of what they're going to cover and what they're not going to cover? So I'm not talking about finding some more extra cable channels to look at. Go look at this burgeoning institution called alternative media, which frankly is becoming so powerful, and we're going to talk about this today. The mainstream media is quite scared about this. Individual people are quite scared about this. And something will happen inside of you if it's supposed to happen. You start to listen to, and I recommend thousands, and I said I would not follow a single human. I would trust nobody, even us. We make mistakes. We might carry them forward. We're going to correct a couple in a minute from last week. Trust your own eyes and your own heart, because I think that might be closer to what God might be trying to tell you, because at the end of the day, this led to me finding God. I was in my 40s, and I just thought this is a book of myths, and I was what I call a just-in-case prayer. God, just in case you're there, if I could win the lotto so I can buy a red Corvette so I can go have sex with that blonde girl sitting at the other end of the bar, I would really, that was my spiritual life. And we're talking about a spiritual war. There's 2 battlefronts in a sense. One is individually. There's really actually, how many people on earth? 7 billion, let's say. 7 billion individual battles. And believe me, there are things and places that we don't necessarily see who have you in mind. Individual battles. And then there is the spiritual war that in a sense we wage, which is a war of the mind. It's a war of beliefs. It's a war of what's inside of us. And believe me, we wouldn't be doing this just to prove that 19 guys from caves in Afghanistan did 9. Who cares? But if we're talking about where your eternal soul ends up, once you get to that point, I don't know how. I mean, personally, I can't do anything else ever. Someone said this, not my words. The only thing of everlasting value any human can do, and I've tried to disprove this statement. Maybe one of you guys can. The only thing we can do of everlasting value is essentially help people get to heaven. Everything else will be burned up. But do not confuse us with some Bible thumpery, doily wearing Christian. We're actually real people. We're based in science. We're based in research. We're based in education. We scrutinize. We question. Oh,
You're getting the message now.
That's AI.
Wow, that was weird. Not
She brought
even
AI
touching
into
it.
the room.
I just want to point out it wasn't
touching
me.
it.
It was not Howard.
Not
So-
me.
I'm a witness.
Can I-
2 people are going to the timeout room. Yes.
Siri's fault.
That's the answer to the question. Let me finish the introductions. We got Jay. Put your head in the camera so people can see you. He's going to be one of our Q correspondents along with Teresa. Hit it.
I didn't know we weren't done with the intro. That was quite an intro.
You know
Yeah.
me,
That's
dude.
a long one.
We're only 4 episodes in to not
Yeah.
practicing
I
anymore.
know.
So
Well, like I said, we are working out the
it's been
bugs.
2 years. We're about there, though.
Right.
We're almost there.
So, do you guys think you'd be here if you believed what the mainstream media was putting out?
Only to make fun of all of you.
That's what I used to do.
Because I'm a sicko. But other than
Well,
that, I would do something else. No, I wouldn't.
Don't you feel that
Here
a lot of the people
spiritually
that
or
you
here in this room?
no here in this room,
Yeah.
he was talking about certain things about the mainstream media and being here. I mean, I don't think any of us. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for the mainstream media seeing something wrong with that. Now you mentioned the 5 owners of the mainstream media. This is fact. This is not a conspiracy. That's truth, right? Things you can follow. All 5 of those media sources spit out the same things. So the things that we're talking about with alternative media and alternative sources is what they're not telling us. So
Those 5 sources spit out Howard's favorite word. They cumulatively, through thousands upon thousands of messages, from radio to cartoons to sitcoms to movies to news shows to newspapers, books. Man, I mean, literally 5 human beings control, and I think the number is about 90%, although it's been dropping in recent years, thanks alternative media. They control 90% of everything that we think, literally. So what they throw out is what's called a Hegelian dialectic. They will entertain any conversation that is within a range. But will you ever see a show that uncovers archaeology that might prove the Bible is true?
I say it's even simpler than that. I mean, you don't have to get deep to know that the mainstream media is not telling you the truth. And that is, you can look at World War II. You can look at the Gulf of Tonkin. You can look at all these different false flags that the government has done and a bunch of different examples politically of what goes on to see that they're not telling the truth.
Right. But didn't you at first think, oh, well, these are just innocent accidents? At what point did you go from, well, they're just ignorant or they're buffoons or they're, okay, one guy lied about this for his personal agenda. But at what point did you start to go, wait a minute, this entire smorgasbord is totally compromised? I mean, was there a moment where that flipped for you?
I can't say it was a moment. It was more of a awakening, a slow awakening. Now, when you start talking about the media, and I've said this before, Donald Trump, I believe, has exposed a lot of the media, because you can watch, like I said at the beginning, I said, I'm not going to vote for Trump. He's not very presidential. Okay. But he started saying things and I would watch it because he was picking up steam, and I'd hear what he said and then I'd hear what the news said about it. I mean, it still happens today. The guy says, MS-13 is animals, and the news comes out, all of them in lockstep. Oh, he thinks all immigrants are animals. Well, a lot of us can figure out, and I think that's what's going on right now with alternative media, is that people are figuring out from the very basic things, the everyday politics, that you're being lied to.
That's a great point, because
we actually had a conversation about something very similar today, because a coworker of mine who Donald Trump could give him $1 million and he would still hate Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. And he was having a conversation with Jay and another office worker about how the whole fake news thing is just Trump's way of discrediting everything, the true and the false. And so Leslie Stahl came on The View, because we know The View is a bastion of correct, good media.
It's on cable television.
That's where I go for precise media.
Me too.
I want to know what Whoopi Goldberg thinks.
Me too.
That's what's really important to me. Okay. Yeah. And so my friend tells me that, well, there was a Leslie Stahl interview the other day, and Donald Trump told her, oh, well, the reason why I call everything fake news is because then nothing could stick. So whatever's fake is fine, but whatever is true, well, that's fake too. I just call everything fake. Okay. And I'm like, wow, if Trump said that, that is huge. So I go Google it. Well, it's not Donald Trump telling this to Leslie Stahl in an interview. It's Leslie Stahl on The View telling it to Whoopi Goldberg. And I said to my buddy, I'm like, come on, dude. How do you know that she's not lying? Well, she was on 60 Minutes. She's incredible. Dude, come on. Come on. It's hearsay. It's hearsay.
It's all hearsay.
It is.
It's more
that
than
is
hearsay.
like
that
is a dot inside of just one dot. That story alone means nothing to the world, because whatever. You know what I mean? But
absolutely,
when you start to dig it. So here's what I was going with what you said, Tony, is little advice for the audience. The inconsistencies that you observe in this world, look into them. There's, I think, a reason they say the devil is in the details. Look at the details. Stop believing things just because your parents grew up believing them and then they handed that belief down to you, which was handed down from someone else to someone else. It's very hard to do, easier to say. Wipe your belief system clean, start over. But one way to do it, I think what you're saying is we had the same process, which is some people call it finding a glitch in the matrix, in a sense. Because you follow that, and almost, if you follow it far enough, seek and ye shall find. You can find the truth of the world, but you're not going to get it on your television set in the 6 o'clock news.
No, absolutely not. The breadcrumbs are out there to follow, but if you're following the news and the Howard's statement, if Donald Trump said this is all fake, I wouldn't deny that either, because honestly, this is almost like a WWE event.
Oh yeah,
people follow this news
analogy
like it's this is what we live on every day.
And they repeat the same lies over and over again until it imprints in someone's mind, and then they start thinking, well, that's what was said, that was true. And I'm running across that problem when I try to explain things to people, because they have been just drowning their brain out by watching this TV constantly and listening to every word for word CNN and the rest of them say, and they won't listen to what actually is going on with things, the overall corruption of the globalists. And it's so hard to make people understand.
They won't understand because they're ingrained with this. What you're describing is propaganda. This was talked about. I mean, this is not conspiracy. This is like we talked about before.
It's in many books.
Propaganda. All this stuff has been out for a long time. Everyone knows how it is. We can see it working in action, repeating these same things over and over. You talk to somebody now on this side of the aisle, what's the first thing they bring up? Russian collusion.
Yes.
Well, there's nothing there that's been any evidence. Oh, but they're not done investigating yet. There's something there. They're not done investigating. And you go to the other side of the aisle, it's the same thing. It's
CGI,
just the other side of the
Clinton
aisle.
Foundation, Haiti.
Clinton Foundation.
Yeah, we're gonna be talking about that.
I mean, the difference is everything on that side of the aisle. It's all true, but
yeah, and I really, this is what's so fascinating, because you should be listening to all this and trying to dig into, like you're saying, you really got to dig into what is the truth.
But no one digs into anything,
because one of us is lied to.
Well, the truth.
One of us is
and if you refuse, this point goes to our greater mission as well. Okay, if you refuse to research both sides of whatever you're trying to figure out the truth about, you are never going to get to the bottom of it. I cannot tell you how many people that I go to and I tell them that the Bible is 100% accurate and real, and they're like, oh, it's a made-up book of fairy tales. I'm like, oh yeah? Did you ever read it? Well, I don't need to read it. Oh, okay, but you've read every Dawkins and Hitchens book ever created, and all you do is regurgitate the lines out of them.
I am so glad you brought that up.
18 years of school and...
Yeah, I was going to consider this possibility, because I was in the exact same boat. And look, we all essentially had the same curriculum in high school. I mean, that comes from the very, very top. The secretary of
my advantage is I didn't show up to high school a whole lot.
Yeah, literally.
You missed out on the brainwashing.
Yeah, like my friends that are PhDs or master's degree, they're what I just consider them more indoctrinated. It is actually much more difficult to crack them because they have this false sense of security about their own intelligence.
Well, they're already smarter than you.
Well, in their mind.
Right.
And I get it, because at the age of 42, I agreed with what Howard just said. The Bible is a book of myths. Obviously. Why did I believe that? Well, it wasn't because I read it. It was because, I heard it in cartoons and I heard it on television shows and then, all movies and
all my friends were saying the
is
same
always
thing.
Making fun of the Bible and yada, 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 yada. And guess what? I never even had to look into it. And I knew for 42 years it was a book of myths.
Right.
I'll tell you one thing. And it wasn't easy. I mean, I was well into something crazy is going on in this world, and I still wouldn't look in the Bible. And like, I mean, for me, you're 6 chapters into the Bible and you're already so far away from what you believe is possible. Okay, what? Adam and Eve were really created by God. We did not evolve. Okay, that's just ridiculous. There were giants on Earth. Okay, you don't even need to go any farther. I'm done. Like, I'm out of here. But actually, and thank God, because I actually went in and taught myself the science. I taught myself about DNA and genetics and biology. And I learned things like the simple cell is not simple. And how funny that the guy that put this theory out there, Darwin, just happened to be a Mason, which all these other people seem to associate with Satanism.
A Mason with a theology degree.
Now, and you think because someone has a religious moniker on them that they're safe? Are you kidding? Let's just say the devil's real. Now, we all know about whether the devil's real or not, but if you're not there, understood. It took me forever to get there. But if he is real, just understand he is much older than you. He's older than your parents. He's older than your grandparents. He has been around a long time. He knows what he's doing. And for me, Howard, something you mentioned in this, when you realize that the set of ancient scriptures predicted 2,000 things that would happen in the future, the book authenticates itself. It does not have an error. Believe me, I have looked for them. I make a joke about this all the time. If you guys are just getting to know me, I wear my heart on my sleeve. I make mistakes. I'm human. I didn't want the Bible to be true because I like going out till 4 o'clock in the morning and sometimes smoking pot and, living life. And if the Bible's true, I know that that's going to put a crimp on it because, in a sense, someone owns me. I don't want to hear this. But at the end of the day, what beat that for me is I'd rather know the truth. Some people, if their husband or spouse cheating on them, they don't want to know. There's other people that want to know, no matter even if it hurts. I am one of those people. I would rather know the truth and then adjust. So one of the things, because I used to actually argue with these quote-unquote idiotic creationists. I'm University of Michigan. My friends, they're lawyers that went to Harvard, University of Chicago, Northwestern. They're investment bankers. They're judges. They're federal prosecutors, doctors, scientists, engineers. You get the picture. And we would what's the word I'm looking for? In this like inner condescending voice, co-signing each other's bullshit, we without ever really knowing the truth, how ridiculous that some people actually want that they think creation should even be taught. Totally agreed. I'd find someone that's trying to have a debate on creation. I'd find myself getting in the debate. Now, this is before I figured it out. I'm getting into the debate and defending really a theory, and evolution is a theory, that I really knew nothing about. And looking back on it, I'm just like, oh, wow, I was totally brainwashed. I'm not going to go into the science of it, but at the end of the day, you actually go look into genetics. The simple cell that Darwin talked about was not simple because inside of each cell is a 15 billion line computer code. Information cannot organize itself. Go understand thermodynamics. The second law of thermodynamics is entropy. We see it everywhere in the world. Things break down and disorganize. Your garage is not going to organize itself into a working Mercedes. Period. But somehow, entropy, the law, not theory of entropy, the law of entropy is broken because we somehow, things started to come together and at the exact same time, 2 different genders are able to now duplicate and there's no programming errors and they're able to continue on. I mean, go throw a few extra keys into Microsoft Windows. Just tap your computer a few times and tell me if your Microsoft program is going to work better. I've never heard of a doctor come out of a delivery room and say there's a genetic mutation with your son and have the parents be happy about it. Understand entropy. absolutely in conflict with creation evolution. Now, we're not going to get into creation evolution, but it's interesting, Howard, you brought up Dawkins. I know we talk about Bill Nye, Neil deGrasse Tyson. Those guys are all over television. By the way, none of them are biologists or geneticists or DNA scientists. And they're revealed by the way they argue. There's a quote in the 401 book from Richard Dawkins. I think I've read it on this show before. And understand, this is not a man arguing science. This is a man selling something. Now, he may believe it. Maybe he's paid to do it. Maybe he has pledged his allegiance to Satan. Maybe he has no idea Satan is real and he just believes there can't possibly be a God, therefore we're here, hence evolution must be true. We don't know what is in a man's heart. But I can find tons of quotes from any of these, Bill Nye, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Michio Kaku, etc. And there's only a handful of them that are all over television. And what you don't know underneath the covers is that the vast majority of science has absolutely thrown evolution out the window. Mm-hmm. But here's the quote from Richard Dawkins. It is absolutely safe to say that if you meet somebody who claims not to believe in evolution, that person is ignorant, stupid, or insane, or wicked, but I'd rather not consider that. Now, as a regular human, by the time you're 20, 30, 40 years old, and remember, if Satan's been around a long time, believe me, he could have easily taken over our education system. In fact, we can prove that on another show, but that is another show. In the early 1900s, through Rockefeller, that name will pop up a lot, in JP Morgan Foundation grants, we created essentially our school system. Now all of a sudden our children are being educated not at home around a dinner table with a Bible. They're now being educated by the state. 20 so years later, suffrage becomes a thing. Women are treated with equality, which is wonderful on many levels. But it helps accomplish the agenda of the people behind the banks that run our world, the Rockefellers, the Morgans, the Rothschilds. Now, all of a sudden, there's no mother at home to take care of the child anymore because women have careers also, and now the state has your kid for 8 hours a day. How hard is it? You know, these guys have unending money because they print it. They put money into a campaign. They get a president into an office. And the next thing you know, the president is given a list of all the appointees, Secretary of Transportation, Secretary of Education, blah, 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 blah. And from the top, and as a CEO of several companies, Tony, you're a CEO of a business. Howard, you're a CEO of your own company. You know that you can control many people, and they never even know you're controlling them. And that's just a little quick hint to some of the things that happen on the underside of this world. And you might not believe us, but if you think there's even a 0.00001% chance, are you willing to bet your eternal soul that we and literally hundreds of millions of other people across the globe have come to this conclusion by accident? Do you really think it is fun to, I mean, Jesus said the world will hate you. I get it. You start talking about these things, and all of a sudden, you are going to polarize everybody. It is not fun. This does not help your dating life or your social life, etc. I mean, can you guys, are you guys feeling me on this one?
Oh,
Absolutely.
yes, definitely.
I think,
why don't you let us hear a little bit. Give us a story of give us a story in your life of how that is manifested in some way.
It's in every thought I have, in everything I see, from day to day, the news I run across, the feelings that people have towards religion, the way I assess what I should do from day to day with my life, and the outcome of what I think my future is going to be and what actions I should take for that. And
did your group of friends change along the way?
Very much so. And I have frequent conversations. Luckily, my family is on the same path as me, and they live in different countries. And, and the same thing are going on in their countries as what is going on here. There's the same issues, and the same corruption seems to be trending through everywhere. And it's very concerning. You never know what our outcome's going to be in the next decade or so in our countries with our government that gets voted in. It's very frightening that, you have to trust that they're doing the right thing for you. And then when you find out, like with 9/11 and so many other things, that they aren't, and there's so many lies going on, it's just very discerning. And it's very hard to make people understand that, because they want to live in this boxed world where they think they have something that is great where they live, and they don't, the government's got our back, and they don't have to worry about anything but going to work and having dinner and watching TV every night. And
and I love to do those things.
Yeah.
Like, normally I don't, unless asked. Like, I never bring this up at parties or in my social life, because I like to do things that, I don't like talking about conspiracy. I don't want to hear about chemtrails today. I want to have fun on the boat. I want to have a beer in the sun and just not worry about. But to ignore this completely, to just live in pleasure, and that is it. I think we all know how potentially dangerous that is, and the potential outcome on an individual level. Literally, we're talking about complete catastrophe.
Oh yes.
If you are breathing today, no matter how tough your life has been, if you figure this out and get to heaven, your life has been a success. If your life is incredibly successful here on earth, and it was even told to us, it would be much harder for these types of people to get it. I think Jesus said this, something about a camel through the eye of a needle. And this breaks my heart with some of my best friends who are very highly educated, loving, good men, without a doubt. But they will be the hardest. It'll be the hardest. They've got much harder shells to crack. I was a hard one too. 40-some years. Like, we're all one breath away. And so let me explain it, the other flip side of this. Because I used to view success as what? Money, nice car, nice apartment, pretty woman on my shoulder, employees, power, reading about my name in the newspaper, things like that. That's what I thought success was. But if you don't end up getting to heaven, your whole life was utter failure, and you literally will have forever to think about it.
Right.
Now, we are not going to be able to prove whether heaven and hell is real, and I don't even really want to get into the creation versus evolution discussion, because we're actually going to be talking about our buddy Q today. Although I will do a quick sidebar about Q, because you're going to run into these people. Last night on my social media, you guys know I've been a lot more active on my social media, if you can't tell. And I screwed up because my 9/11 movie followers are mixed in with my friends. And I'm too lazy to go through the 5,000 names on there. Okay, friend, not, acquaintance, close friend. Do you understand?
Right.
So I'm talking to a wide range of people, and it's a challenge. And last night, we're not here saying trust Q or don't trust Q. In fact, I would say don't trust Q. Don't trust anybody. But there's something unbelievably interesting happening, and we're going to get into it. But this guy got on my Facebook page, and he's like, anyone that talks about Q or believes in Q is an idiot, and if you're following Q, you might even be treasonous. Now, I don't know if this guy is just an utter ignoramus or an agnostic, which is what ignorant, or if he is deceitful. But I don't care, because we're in a spiritual war, folks, and I'm telling you, the other side does not play fair. Don't throw some word like fair and balanced journalism. It's a saying. It does not really happen. And my advice, if you guys are in chat rooms, because believe me, the people at the Central Intelligence Agency that listen into shows like this, they're in our chat rooms. We've got 2 million security clearances. What are all these people doing? Well, what they're doing is they're sitting in a cubicle, maybe at Langley, maybe in their own basement. They could be a contractor through Lockheed Martin, for instance. And they'll have 3 computers going, and they'll be assigned several accounts. I've gotten to know mine to the point where it doesn't matter if he's coming at me in the name of Cal Amiot or John S. Phillips or, Joe Blow. I can literally tell it. You can see what's happening and what you're really dealing with. So when you go into a chat room, and this is how fierce this spiritual war is. Now, this is very front lines. There's a guy in a cubicle somewhere. He's got 2, 3, 4 computers in front of him. He's been assigned to and he's in your chat rooms, and he's actually literally having conversations, making it appear as if 4 people are all conversing and agreeing that the thought of Q is a ridiculously stupid idea, but you're really actually seeing one person. And this isn't always the case, but this is one of the levels of this spiritual combat that we're in, where he makes it seem as if everyone in the chat room is saying this is stupid. And guess what happens? When you hear that, or you hear Richard Dawkins go, "You're stupid for saying it," guess what it does to most humans? Because we're weak by nature. It gets us to not talk about it. It gets us to, put our tail between our legs and go, "Okay, I'm sorry, I'm wrong." They are effing with you, people. And this spiritual war, now, at the front line, sometimes they're called trolls. I've dealt with them on many levels in my personal life. I've been threatened, yada, 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 yada. And they go all the way up to the faces we see on television. Go look into, Tony, you brought this up last week, Operation Mockingbird.
Mm-hmm.
What was Operation Mockingbird? Or I should say, what is
it's not like it's ended.
Mockingbird?
Obviously, it's with the Operation Mockingbird was a CIA program that paid reporters and journalists to move stories to the mainstream media, presented them in the mainstream media. So they actually had operators creating the stories and producing the stories and reporting on them like they were real events.
And it actually morphed. Don't take my words, but if you trust, say, Carl Bernstein, or who was the congressman that was trying to out the Illuminati that was killed in KAL, like 007?
It's one of our trivia questions.
It'll come to me later. Nonetheless, this is all over the congressional record. It's history. It's not the history they'll put in your history books. It is not the history you will get on television. But this program morphed to the point where first they were converting journalists into agents. But now they're growing agents and making them journalists. And I'm talking about some of the most famous people in the world. You'd be very surprised who their true allegiance is to. And if you are one of those people, mainstream media, because we're going to talk about the unbelievable pressure each individual person on television is under right now, because they are, all of them, in a catch-22 where they are damned if they do and they are damned if they don't. What I consider the story Q. Big story?
Well, it's big.
Well, hang on. Is it a popular story?
No, I don't think so.
Would you consider it one of the potentially biggest stories in history, though?
I would.
Well, why isn't our mainstream media covering it?
Exactly.
Well, it's fringe. It's not, it's
tin hat conspiracy.
It's tin hat stuff, dude.
Is it?
Well, that's what they would say if they were going to report on it, if they were going to.
Yeah,
give it credibility.
Discredit it.
Yeah, you give it credibility by even mentioning it in the first place. It would be to discredit it.
So Q is an anonymous. We don't know much about Q, but we know a few things with relative certainty. And like I said, I'm not putting my hope in Q to the point where if you're an investigator, you're a detective, and you're investigating a crime, are you going to refrain from listening to a witness testimony because they're from a different part of town? Would you? You're a detective. You're trying to solve a crime.
Yeah.
Someone says they have information, but they're from a part of town you don't like. As a police officer, would you say, I don't want to talk to you?
Well, if you're a good police officer, no, you wouldn't say that.
Of course not. You'd say, well, yeah, talk.
You listen to all the evidence.
Now, what if one of your suspects said, I'd like to make a police statement? Would you say, oh, I don't want to talk to you. Would you say, I don't want to talk to you, I don't want to listen to you?
No, you take it all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You take all the information. So if you've felt any level of pressure in the world, whether it's in chat rooms, on television, or in Richard Dawkins quotes, to not look over there, look over
That's
there.
exactly where you should be looking.
Number one.
Right.
And this is why I say don't trust anybody, even us. The only thing you can trust is your own heart and your own eyes. Literally, in this spiritual war, that is how alone you are.
And when and if your own heart and your own lie and your own eyes come into conflict with the Bible, trust the Bible.
Absolutely.
That's a whole nother level, but right. Yes, agreed. I was about to say something.
I apologize.
No worries,
I just had to get that
worries.
in there, bro.
Okay, where were we?
You got 2 minutes to break since we're I ruined the flow anyway.
All right. One thing I do want to say about a friend of mine, Jimmy Custer. He is, this has nothing to do with Q. This is just a plug. We'll go to break. We will come back. We're going to fill in the picture of Q and what's going on in the media, and we will jump right into it, not pussyfoot around.
No more tangents.
I promise. Actually, everything we've talked about is actually on the quote-unquote show agenda. Anyhow, he's got the Detroit Music Fest is coming up this week.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Okay. He's got a gig going on at the Russell Industrial Center from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. Kelly Jean, his co-host, is performing.
Oh, awesome.
And Jimmy, send me your address because I want to send you something, and that's money. And you got to hurry because Dave Hooper and money don't stay together very long. So hurry.
It's a tenuous relationship.
All right, so why don't we take our break?
Can I get a filler real quick based on what you talked about earlier? You were talking about Dawkins and these kind of things. James Perloff does a really good job describing how that works. I don't know if you guys are familiar with James Perloff. He's an author and creates documentaries and things like this.
Spell that last name.
Perloff, I believe.
Okay. I think there's an H in there, like Pearl Hoff.
Yeah, this will get you there.
Anyhow.
That should get you there. Look up Shadow Ring as one of the popular ones. But he talks about what you're taught when you're young. You go to church. You may go to church, and then you go to school. When you go to church, they tell you about the Bible and this is how God created the earth, et cetera, et cetera. When you go to school, they say, no, we'll tell you the real story. This is science. This is how this happened with biology. And same thing with what you're saying is humans, the kids, they immediately think, oh, well, this is real. This is science. This is what everybody believes. This Bible stuff is not true. So they become automatically atheists.
They take it a step further and they attack the kids that profess their faith.
Oh, absolutely.
I used to do that. Yeah.
So 100% true. Teachers are doing this right now as we speak. Happened to my daughter.
Yeah. So he's got some very interesting points on that and examples of how this stuff happens, just like you guys are describing. So I just want to share that.
Howard, you want to get us into break?
Why not? Okay, so for our
that was enthusiastic. Way to have energy, busy, man.
We can wait.
I'm busy trying to make everything run here. So for our Facebook audience, we're going to take a quick break, and then we will go live again in about 5 minutes. So we will be right back. Welcome back. We are back from break, and we're going to talk about all kinds of fun stuff here. So we want to just get right into the Q thing. I'm gonna hand it over to Teresa and Dave because it was kind of their segment, and then we'll just pipe in as necessary. So, Dave, feel free.
Yeah, and actually, I want everyone piping in on Q. So, something's weird because I don't hear anything in the headphones.
I'm not either.
I do.
I hear you.
My headphones work awesome.
Something seems too quiet. Are we recording, Mr. Howard?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's just talk about Q. If not, we've got Elijah's backup camera working. All right, so what do we know about this Q character, and why is everyone talking about him? And why do I also caution to not trust Q? Because we don't know yet with certainty if Q is a good guy or a bad guy. Some of the things that are happening are like literally so incredible that I personally think this is either going to buy the world another 30 years or we're ushering in the Antichrist. One of those two, but it will not hurt to look into it, I'll tell you that. And frankly, it might be our best hope. I mean, there's nothing else that we've got that we might be able to hang our hat on. I will say this as someone that has had an interest in exposing the real culprits of 9/11, which I never thought would ever happen. I never ever, even I'm in the middle of making part 2 of the movie. I'm actually, for the first time, thinking there is a chance that these culprits will end up being brought to justice. So some of the things we know about Q, or we can say we are relatively certain about. And again, use your own eyes. You can find Q now everywhere. He is, or I'm going to say he, but we don't know if it's a man, a woman, or a group of people. This is someone that is in the White House. This is someone that has access to worldwide intelligence, knows things that are going on in the Vatican before they're announced to the public, knows things that are going on at the Department of Justice before they come out to the public. And what Q has done, and what Trump has done, and look, this show is not about politics at all. If you are in some paradigm of Republicans versus Democrats, I don't even know what to say. You're just playing right into that old Hegelian dialectic. I mean, really, guys, if you're as old as I am, does your life change whether it's a Republican? It's the same economic policy, the same war policy, the same erosion of freedoms. And if you think that that's where battle lines are drawn, even national borders, if you think that's where real battle lines are drawn, you are, I don't mean to be rude, because I was there, but you're kind of brainwashed. But we're going to help you pull out of that if you hang with us. In fact, if you go to genpopmedia.com, you can go listen to many of those 120-some shows that are out there. Each one paints a dot. If you've got the perseverance to hang with us that long, you will be able to paint a picture enough right off of just those shows where you'll get it. I still would say triple, quadruple, quintuple, cross-reference your information. Don't just listen to us. Because in our little pointillism painting here, we might have gotten some colors wrong. We might have some black dots because we don't see it. Some parts of the picture aren't colored in yet. But there's enough dots here that we could see the picture.
Yeah.
Hence, we're seeing.
And really, if you check something that you heard us say, and then come to find out, you find that we basically, maybe we made a mistake or we were incorrect about something, then you just learned something. So you're welcome.
So on that note, 2 mistakes that I wanted to clear up from last week. One is I want to apologize to the audience about something. Because I referenced a video of Uma Abedin and Hillary Clinton. And I spoke about it with like authority as if it is authentic, which I don't know if it is. Personally, do I suspect it is? Yeah, I do. And I shouldn't have done that. I've said enough about it now that you can go search for it if you like. But be careful, because if that video is what is believed to be, you can literally break the law by watching it. You can certainly learn a lot about it without actually watching the video, and it's so bloody disturbing that I wouldn't recommend it. Second thing I wanted to correct is we'd made a comment last week about the fact that about 30 or so books were removed from the scriptures. Now, in Jesus' day, the scriptures were more than just the 66 books we have in the Bible. There were another 30 or so books that are called the Apocrypha. And I said those were removed at the Council of Nicea, but it was actually the Council of Laodicea. And I think it was 324 AD, if I'm not mistaken.
325 was the Council of Nicea.
Then what was Laodicea? I'm going to murder. Okay, timeout room.
323.
Oh, we've got our...
323. 363. 2 hands for 6.
Can we get Kat to pull... Will you pull up a chair and just get in here?
Yeah, there's an extra
Kat,
setup.
Teresa, Kat. Kat is our... she's our Johnny on the spot Bible verse.
So
research
essentially,
captain.
you were incorrect about the Council of Nicaea. Corrected. Okay.
Again, don't trust what I say. Go look it up. But that's not the
And you'll learn some fascinating things if you study it.
Back to Q.
Yes.
So now for me, when I see Q, I actually see God's fingerprints all over this. Not just because of Q's prophetic abilities. Because every day, and there are and I'm going to refer to him as a he for simplicity. He makes, what, Jay, 6, 7 posts a day on average? Some days more, some days less. Do we know enough about him yet?
Today was nothing.
Today and,
it was very unusual.
Yeah, it was dry, but most days, he's posting like crazy.
So leading up to the big, for instance, flip that happened with Congress, now instead of this witch hunt for Russian yada yada, Congress and the Department of Justice have now turned the tables, and they're going to start to investigate the investigators. What's incredible is that is one of the predictions Q made a few days ago. Even said it would happen on the blank 23rd, and it happened on the 23rd of May, yesterday. Now, I don't even know if the mainstream media has started to pick that up yet. I am also relatively certain that Q is a Christian. Q has made, what now, 1,500 posts, give or take? Why do I think the fingerprints of God are on him? Well, there was a man once that walked around without a marketing team, without any whiteboards or chalk or televisions. He just started to speak the truth to a couple of people, which turned into 12, which turned into 500, which turned into a few thousand. Nothing flashy, nothing glitzy. And here we are 2,000 years later, and pretty much every single human being in the world has heard of Jesus Christ. Well, what did Q do? He started off with an innocent little post in a social media platform called 4chan. Quick sidebar, I had a guy tell me, and a disinformation agent, I suspect, or just a dum-dum, who said, you can't, there was a guy in a chat room that predicted the Las Vegas shooting. Is anyone aware of what I'm saying right now?
Yes.
That a guy named John predicted the Las Vegas shooting. So, and all Q did was kind of, he took the wind out of his sails and kind of picked it up. Okay. That's actually wrong. Now, was there a guy named John in a 4chan chat room that predicted the Las Vegas shooting? I suspect there was. I did not look it up. Let's just say the guy was there. That, to me, is not a big deal. People have been predicting false flags for hundreds, if not thousands of years. I mean, we know a friend of mine, Susan Lindauer, former CIA. She knew 9/11 was coming. Inside the CIA, she tried to tell her bosses. And, you think she's the only one, by the way? She's one of hundreds, maybe even thousands of whistleblowers. Go look up a man named Kevin Shipp, S-H-I-P-P. Jay, you heard Kevin Shipp this week.
Yeah.
If you want to get a quick understanding of how the deep state works and what's the difference between the deep state and the shadow government.
That right there was mind-blowing for me because I always thought they were the same one.
Now, we've been talking about how this amoeba-like, ethereal, loosely organized network, some people call the Illuminati. In the 60s, they were called the establishment. The elite, the 1%, Jesus Christ referred to them as the synagogue of Satan. And these people have been around literally since the beginning of time, literally. And Kevin Shipp breaks down beautifully how they operate, how they deceive, where they get their money, who gets the money. I learned something. On average, $264 comes out of every American's paycheck to go to Lockheed Martin, who is the largest U.S. government contractor. And what does Lockheed Martin do with that? Now, that's a shitload of money.
Yeah.
FYI. Well, guess who the people that are in these chat rooms that are spreading disinformation? Well, guess what? I don't think they actually have CIA badges, but they're contractors of companies that have been hired by the CIA to do a particular job. And somewhere in thousands, if not tens of thousands of cold call rooms, phone rooms, that, you know, people factories like that, you've got these people going to work that are just earning a paycheck, doing a job they were told to do, not realizing what it is they're actually doing, which is subverting the truth. The way Kevin Shipp explained it was so much better than we have, but if you listen to any of our 100-plus shows, or most of them, you'll understand how these guys operate. They're very real. They're incredibly dangerous. These are the same people that killed John F. Kennedy. These are the same people that tried to kill Andrew Jackson. They killed Abraham Lincoln. They have been closing down the truth for centuries. We are up against something much bigger than at least I could see when we first got in this. So back to John, 4chan. This guy gets on my Facebook yesterday and he's like, oh, all Q is you know, he picked up this, he's just doing what John did. He predicted the Vegas shooting. Predicting one false flag, not a big deal. Like I said, Susan Lindauer did it, Kevin Shipp, Sibel Edmonds, Ted Gunderson. I mean, the people out of the intelligence community trying to bring the truth to light. The numbers are staggering, but you'll never hear them on mainstream news. But I'll bet you this. I'll bet you you'll see a funny cat video tomorrow, or you'll see a diet show.
Just saw a guy surfing on a Sam's Club table. It was awesome.
Yeah. You'll hear some ridiculous story of some corner in the world that meets their agenda. They'll highlight some story, make it seem like it's a thing that's happening. They'll do anything. They will keep you in the inside of the dialectic because you can't go outside. So here's another famous person that predicted one of my favorite false flags was 9/11. Bill Cooper, 76 days before 9/11. He clearly, he was saying it all year long in 2001. There's going to be a terrorist event, folks. It's going to be in New York City. They're going to blame it on this guy, Osama bin Laden, and don't you even believe it. And even as he's broadcasting this, he said, my fate is sealed. I'm going to die. He knew what he was up against. He knew that he would be murdered for this. He was. And he's a hero and a martyr. He's one of the first conspiracy theorists. You can go back to 1898, a book called Futility. Has another name. It's called the Wreck of the Titan. 1898. Tell me if this story sounds familiar to anyone. The story is about the biggest passenger ship that has ever been built. It has a twin. On a trip from Europe to the United States, this passenger ship hits an iceberg. Now, how ice can cut through 10 inches of steel, that's a whole other story, but go get a pan out of your kitchen. Go get some ice. I will give you $1,000. Do whatever you want. Shoot it through some speed blaster, throw the ice at it 100 miles. Try to tear some ice, okay? But that's a whole other thing. It's interesting that in 1898, this story comes out of this ship's going to sink, how it's going to sink. 15 years later, 1913, the Titanic sinks. Very pivotal event in history. We're reminded of it so much more than, say, the Lusitania, for instance. I think it's got a couple purposes. Number one, it sends a message to the people that are involved in what I'm just going to call evil, the kind that can only exist if the Bible is true, the kind that Q talks about almost every day. Q absolutely understands there is a spiritual war going on here. And what was so critical about that sinking? Well, 3 key members of Congress and families that had control over our banking that were blocking United States' desire, or I should say, a safety net of not letting foreigners print our currency. When that ship sank, those 3 boats died with them. Look up John Astor, I believe. Astor's the last name. And it was only later that year that the Federal Reserve Act was passed, and we gave the ability to print money, not to the federal, well, to an organization called the Federal Reserve, but it's privately owned by about 300 shareholders, and most of them aren't even American. And if you do your due diligence, you're going to realize whether you believe the entity is real or not, they happen to praise this entity called Lucifer. Kind of spooky, if you ask me. Took me a long time of hearing that before I actually realized, oh my gosh, this is more literal. So look, announcing a false flag, it's really not that difficult. What Q has done, in my mind, is unbelievable. People that announce a false flag usually have the outcome of Bill Cooper dead, or Susan Lindauer spent a year in prison to shut her up. That's what normally happens when a whistleblower comes out. I think Donald Trump understands this because, and Q certainly understands this, we've got a systemic problem. And this is not something that 6 people in this room came up with. I mean, aside from the fact that there are millions at this point reporting on this, I'm going to repeat a couple of quotes that we've seen, if I can even pull these things up, through history. Because this has been coming out of the mouths of presidents of the United States. Here's a quote from Woodrow Wilson's book, The New Freedom in 1913. Now, you guys tell me what you think he's talking about. Since I entered politics, I have chiefly had men's views confided to me privately. Some of the biggest men in the U.S. in the field of commerce and manufacturing are afraid of somebody, are afraid of something. They know that there is a power somewhere so organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete, so pervasive, that they had better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it. Huh. This sounds like a really powerful, scary organization.
Yeah.
Now, could this be the same organization that killed John F. Kennedy? Well, let's see what he had to say. I don't even think I have his quote ready to go. Let's go to J. Edgar Hoover. Now, here's a guy I think that ended up getting it, head of the FBI. From the top of a mountain nearly 2,000 years ago, Christ warned mankind against being duped by the very menace which we face today. Now, he said this in 1957. Hoover continues. He said, "Beware of false prophets which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves." I think he was talking about the mainstream media of the day. Ted Gunderson, he was in line to become director of the FBI under, I think it was Jimmy Carter. He was in charge of 700 field agents in Los Angeles. He began to see coming across his desk this unbelievable pattern of satanic crime. I know these words are scary, okay? I was scared too. And if you don't want to know the truth, turn it off. If you want to understand what's really going on in the world, what Ted Gunderson had to say about it was this. And he spoke about it. He ended his career at the FBI because, again, when this touches you, your old life is over. He said this: "This evil element has infiltrated virtually every level of society. It's in the government. They've gone out of their way, of course, to infiltrate the city, county, state, and federal government. It's in the banking system, in the courts. It's in the prosecutors, the attorneys, the doctors. It's mind-boggling." And I think we've all, at that some point on our own research, have figured out what we're up against is mind-boggling. He continues, "It's unbelievable." And that's the end of the quote. John F. Kennedy, I do believe, died for this. He gave several speeches.
Definitely.
Now, you can't, even as the president, and I understand Donald Trump's problem, he is up against a system that owns our media. Cumulatively, our media is more powerful than the president. Right now, there's a story that will come out every single day about how horrible Donald Trump is. They are playing you. Again, I'm not a Republican or Democrat. That is irrelevant. I really, truly believe he really messed up the apple cart for them. And this is where I start to think maybe God had something to do with this. Do I find it odd? God said, "I will always tell my people what's going to happen." Is it odd that I can go back and watch dozens of postings, 10 years, beginning 10 years before Donald Trump became president, of these people who claim to be prophets of God, saying that Donald Trump is going to be president? Is there a correlation? I know, not quote unquote, it's not scientific, but what are the statistical possibilities? One argument I get is, oh, well, people have made enough predictions of who'd be president that, of course, some people are going to predict Donald Trump. Fine. Go find me 10 that predict Neil deGrasse Tyson's going to be president, for instance. And then to also claim to be a prophet of God. Understand, when you start to step into those waters, you make a mistake. In the Old Testament, they would kill you because they knew you were a liar. So these prophets of God, and again, do I trust any one of them? Nope. Do I believe God has prophets in the world? Absolutely. Not just because I'm a blind believer, but simply because 1,500 or so predictions God made before they happen have all come true to a T. I'm now to the point where the remaining 500, I'm listening here. He said, don't listen to false prophets. He didn't say, don't listen to any prophets. He says, don't listen to the wrong ones, meaning I'll still be communicating through prophets. Maybe the books of the Bible we're not going to be writing anymore, but I will still be communicating to my people. My people will hear my voice. I just find it a statistical abnormality is an understatement, an improbability is an understatement. I mean, when you get to 10 to the 5th, 6th, 7th power or 50th power, 50th, you're now in what scientists call.
Well, it's so close to zero that
it's a miracle.
It's impossible that it was by accident.
So, but the devil is crafty. I do believe Woodrow Wilson was very correct when he said this evil element is so interlocked, so organized, so complete that it is very possible that what Q is the biggest psyop in history, and it will, in fact, usher in the Antichrist. It is not beyond Satan's abilities to get some people to claim to be prophets of God starting a long time ago. This guy's had his plan worked out. Well, Jesus was disclosing it. In fact, Daniel, 400 years before Jesus, was disclosing the plan 3,000 years ago. So it's not like he's making this up on the fly here. It could be the greatest psyop in history. Or it could be real. And only time will tell. There is no way right now to either disprove or prove, I believe. Does anyone disagree with that assertion that we cannot?
No, that's honest. You know.
Is there a way we can prove or disprove that Q is the real? He's really in the White House. They really are, in this ingenious way, they have now circumvented the mainstream media.
I mean, you can put some credibility to it with predictions that come true that are, some of it, even for me, it's kind of hard to dismiss.
He predicted that the Department of Justice would flip the investigation on the investigators on the 23rd of something, and it happened last night on the 23rd. Jay, you called me all excited at 3 o'clock in the morning. Thanks, Jay. So Donald Trump, he's got this problem. He is up against a system that, as Kennedy said, has vast resources. They've conscripted parts of the military, parts of the intelligence community, parts of our media. You can't just go arrest the 9/11 guys and you know, okay, we're done. That cancer would grow right back over. He's got to treat this like a metastasized cancer, a cancer that is spread through our whole body, through our whole system. If you don't get the whole cancer out, what does it do?
It just comes back.
It grows back. So are you starting to realize why there are right now 30-some thousand sealed indictments in the world? Why there's photographs of people like Hillary Clinton and Uma Abedin wearing ankle monitors? Why so many of the elite? I was going to literally talk about the fact that many of these people know what's coming. They know they're about to be exposed. Now, this is the pressure that is on our media, because this is so ingenious, I don't even think this is a human plan. I still am not completely certain whether this is of the devil or of God, but this plan is of something so intelligent, I just don't think a human could come up with this. Because what did Q start off by doing? How has he gained this much credibility? Why suddenly are there millions of people? Did he come with an ad on the Super Bowl? Nope.
Right.
Very quietly on October 29th, his first post. open your eyes. And he starts to predict what's going to happen in the world. And people that are tuned into these things, they start to go, that's 8 in a row. He's predicted. Wow. North Korea and South Korea, although they had a setback, they're going to join? That's impossible. But 3 weeks later, there's photographs of Kim Jong-un and the head of South Korea. We're in peace talks that have never happened. Prediction. The Pope would have a bad May, that he's going to be exposed for just some very heinous crimes. Don't take it personally if you're Catholic. I grew up Catholic. He's authenticating himself. Again, God's fingerprints. Satan's a counterfeiter, though. The truth or the proof will be in the pudding. Any other predictions you guys have done some research on? I know, Teresa, you were looking into this. Anything that pops out?
His first opening that I can remember, and I wrote this in some of my notes from last year, was the Calm Before the Storm. And that was his open entitlement, and that rolled out a lot of information that he kept going with. And it's really unusual that he's getting so much, or she, or the entity of it, is getting so much access over this last year, considering if they are really looking into Russian collusion and hacking and all this, how are people able to get into government-secured sites to obtain stuff like that? And it's obvious that this person has been able to do that repeatedly.
Wait. He's definitely he has access to Air Force One. He has access to the Oval Office. He has access to Trump. So he's in a little bit of a rock and a hard place because, and this is why I suspect he speaks somewhat cryptically or communicates in leading questions, because we do have national security laws, and you can't just come out and say blah 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 blah. You can get in trouble for that, and maybe this tide swings another way. But it would be right up God's alley to pull this off without breaking the law. So where's the pressure? What is this pressure we keep talking about? Well, Q now has caught fire. I mean, people they're listening. I ran a poll on my Facebook. Now, it's a totally skewed audience. Most of them already understand 9/11 was a false flag. 75% of them are at least familiar with Q. Wow, for someone that's never put out a single ad, as a businessman, tell me how to reach people like that. He's never put out an ad. No marketing material. He doesn't even have a website. He just has a rotating IP address that he does for his own security, and he puts out information, any of which, if it does not come to fruition, would disprove him. And the reason millions upon millions of people are now starting to pay attention to this is because he's never wrong. Mm-mm. And if what he's saying is true, you may not have heard it yet. It might not be the biggest story in American history because Anderson Cooper hasn't told you yet. But what we're looking at is literally the biggest story in American history. So here's what your average television host on TV, why their stomach, I believe, is churning every night. Because they are damned if they do, and they're damned if they don't. The one thing the Illuminati has always feared is what?
Getting the word out. People
exposure.
Out
people waking up.
Yeah.
It's happening. Now, every single day, the number, look, Q started off 6 months ago with one post. How many, are we now in the millions, tens of millions, 100 million people yet that are now following the story in 6 months? So what's happening is the cumulative alternative media, it's 10,000 shows like this one, each with an audience from one person to 100,000. Small, not competing with the CNNs of the world with 50 million audience. Together, this alternative media is saying a very different story than what the mainstream media and all these conspiracy theorists that all found essentially these glitches in the matrix are starting to put the dots of this picture together. Now, every day that goes by that the mainstream media, that Anderson Cooper does not cover Q, he's creating a massive problem for himself. Because if he continues to ignore this story, he is going to be facing an armed populace. That's one reason they want to get rid of your guns, folks. Do not, under any circumstances, let that happen. It's the only reason we're free. So he's either going to have to deal with an armed populace that knows that he was subverting the truth. I wouldn't want that. Or he can break what I'm suspecting are his orders and instead jump on the bandwagon to start to get in front of the story. But now he's got to face the people that have enough power to kill President Kennedy. The people that kill people all the time when they want to shut them up.
Right. The suffragists.
And this, I think what Q called it, a storm is coming. It absolutely is coming. Because, for an example, we're just another show amongst thousands that are now, we're not Q devotees, we're not Q followers, but we're reporting on him. I want to see what he does. And he's
predicted for the next one. He says that CNN has a video they're going to be releasing in his May 22nd post. And I guess it's going to bring out all the corruption of the FBI and quite a few things. And I guess he got a hold of some emails that the head people of the FBI have been corresponding back and forth with their concerns about what CNN has on them right now. So I am really anxious to see this video.
This is why I actually have hope. Look, my hope before this was in the fact that I discovered heaven and hell are real. And it's not based on what you do. It's based on your belief. And I believe it so much that I will die for it. So I know I'm going to heaven unless I screw up, which is highly possible. But this hope is one of hope for our life here in the world. Because if you understand the game of chess, now if you think we're in a checkers game and you're staring at a chessboard, you will have no idea what's going on. But what everyone in this room has done is essentially taught themselves the real game. And then when you start to look around and you realize, oh my gosh, we are 2 moves away from a checkmate, but all the people who think we're playing checkers, they don't have a word. Why are you bringing up chemtrails? I mean, let's have a good time. Let's not worry about this. Understood, but don't ignore it completely at your own peril.
Right.
So the pressure that is now starting to increase every day, I brought up Fox News because we've been talking about this for 3 years. And when I say these people are, praise Lucifer, they're Satanists in the biblical form. They require child sacrifice. They do things that the regular population is not prepared to just have blurted out. Couldn't handle it, truly. But what Q's doing, this is another ingenious part of this plan, is he's softening people up.
Yeah,
because guess what?
Tidbits.
There are people listening today that right now they're looking up, what's this Uma Abedin and Hillary Clinton? And I think the first guttural reaction is, well, this is impossible. But then they'll hear it again. And then they're going to hear this is happening from other places. Because one thing Q has promised is that literally this satanic cabal, the very one Jesus warned us about, the one Woodrow Wilson talked about, the one John F. Kennedy talked about, the one that all of history has been trying to warn you about, but we've gotten our ears closed off and our eyes shut because we're brainwashed. That is what brainwashing is. Oh, I thought you were telling me 5 minutes.
No,
and after
no.
last week, I'm like, I cannot be. I cannot run it this time.
I just wanted to say something real quick. My roommate actually asked me about that video yesterday, and this guy, he has nothing. He doesn't know anything about anything. So it's like, and I told him, and I feel like he heard it so much. Like I told him everything that I thought that was on that video, and you could just see it in his face that he didn't want to believe it, but you could just tell it his heart.
It will.
And this, but this guy knows. This guy thinks 9/11 was 19 people. You know what I mean? Like, not into this at all.
He's got a long way to go. And look, it's something. This is not like no one wakes up in a day. what happens is you get a little light into your eye. And at first, it is really uncomfortable, even painful. I mean, this metaphor really works. But in time, you've got full vision. But it takes a while to get there. Could we deal with our friends over there, please? So what's going on with Q is we're being softened up for what the real story is. Now, if you think the real story is about government collusion or the fact that now it seems now that the media has embraced the fact that, wow, Obama did put a spy into the Trump campaign.
What?
Well,
oh yeah.
Are you joking? Or are you serious?
Oh, I'm joking. It's like we don't know that
remember,
this is...
we've got a wide audience here.
Yeah.
Well, there were no scandals in the Obama administration. What are you talking
understand
about?
that this is not about Democrats and Republicans. If you're thinking along party lines, this will not make sense to you. It's not checkers. It's chess, multiple moving parts. But that story right there, which the media has now kind of had to embrace because it's in the public. You can go find the documents yourself on places like FBI.gov, not in conspiracy websites. Okay, you can find it in the real kit and caboodle. So that story right there, by the way, a spy in the campaign of an opposing party. Does this sound like any historical event to anybody?
Yeah.
Come on, spit it out.
Judas.
Yes.
Watergate.
Oh.
Yeah.
Now, that was just bugging the enemy party's headquarters. By the way, this has been going on since long before Nixon. And Kat, will you do me a favor? And in the meantime, will you figure out what passage Haman and Mordecai is from? This is not. This is nothing I came up with on my own. One of God's prophets said this. Same thing Q's saying. Same thing all of God's prophets have said, including the one they're there. Yeah, I'm sure there's some false ones. Again, some of the dots might be black, but you listen to enough of them, your heart will tell you what's true. It's in Esther. Be ready if you can. We'll get to that one sec. So these prophets of God are all saying God's had it. Now, first you got to believe there's a God. So if you're not there, well, you got some other bigger problems than what we got to tell you. So God's got prophets. All these prophets, there's a few common things they're saying. They all keep saying the same thing, which is we are going to flip the tables on evil. God is going to flip the tables on evil. And I did not know the story of Haman and Mordecai. But Kat, correct me if I'm wrong. Do you want to tell us that story, or do you know the story is basically this, and I don't want to get the names wrong, but I think Mordecai had gallows built for Haman, or vice versa. And I'm waiting to hear you pipe in, Kat, so I don't screw up the names. This has God's fingerprint on it, because some of the more disturbing things is, it takes a while to get your arms around this, but there are FEMA camps in this world. They are, death camps, and they are outfitted with guillotines, and they're preparing for a Holocaust that will make the Nazis look like Girl Scouts. God says that I'm going to flip these tables. One of God's prophets, who has no idea about FEMA camps, who has no idea about politics, no idea about conspiracies, just says, they're saying the same thing. These aren't people that are coming from our perspective of research. They're getting information supernaturally. And I've heard this many times, go look at the story of Haman and Mordecai. They're going to flip the tables. The camps that were built for people that would not be part of the New World Order, another prediction God made that Satan would try to unite the world, New World Order, blah, 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 that those will actually be used for the very Illuminati, the crooked congressmen, the senators, the people on television that broadcast our news that are part of this demonic system. Going back as recently as 1972, John Todd, a defector right out of the Illuminati, said every single newscaster you see on television is essentially a witch. They're into Satanism. There's covens in every hometown. I know my hometown has a couple. I even think I know some of the members, but that's a whole other story. Prophet says something like this, then the words come out of Q's head, this storm is coming. Now, at the beginning, the story is it's going to be about collusion. It's going to be about how James Comey botched up some investigation or went way outside his job description to do what a prosecutor would do, and that is to recommend whether to go to trial or not. He's an investigator.
And signed waivers before people even went to court yet.
I'll say this. Q also said that James Comey, John Brennan, John Clapper, people like that they are satanic pedophiles. And we are seeing this abusive satanic network. It is being infiltrated all over the place.
Yes.
I wanted to get to Roger Ailes last week, the former president of Fox News.
Yeah.
Because one thing Q said is that you're going to start to see people resigning, suicides. You're going to see abuse, sexual trafficking, pedophilia. It's going to start to, because that is the real story. That is how evil these people are. Remember, Satan requires sacrifice. Where do the 500,000 or so children that go missing every year? Don't get me wrong, I'm a father. I think most of us are. Jay, you might be and just not know. Dodge a bullet story. I don't protect my child by holding my ears together and screaming, no. You protect them by understanding what's actually happening. I got 2 minutes. I wouldn't be surprised if God is doing right now, even on a household level, I can attest to this in my own household, to townships, to governments, where the table is going to be flipped. And what's beginning now is like a corruption investigation is going to end with the revelation of the most heinous crime by some of the most currently loved people. And they're feeling this. And you're going to start to see them resigning, moving, trying to get underground. And at the end of the day, I do believe God is behind that. We will find out with certainty. Anyone else have anything to add in the last 90 seconds?
No. Wasn't there a time frame when we would know what this is all about, who this is?
Yep. I don't know when the post was, but he said, in 6 months, I'll reveal myself, and you'll never believe who I am.
Okay. Interesting.
And everyone's got, I love keyboard warriors. Oh, it's XYZ, it's XYZ. At the end of the day, you cannot disprove, nor can you prove.
Yeah.
If you're listening to anyone that is trying to talk about Q with certainty, red flag, you certainly can't prove it. So when John S. Phillips gets on my Facebook page yesterday, I spend about 1.3 seconds before I decide to block him. I didn't need to go far because he can't possibly know that Q is a false flag.
Right.
Not yet.
Can I get my prediction in now?
Please.
As to who Q is? Chuck Norris.
Chuck Norris.
Do you guys actually think Q is one person?
No.
I
don't know.
I do. I think so.
Do you think? I mean,
No, different.
Let's talk-
tone. No, his messages, different tones, different dialect, different. But
No,
who knows? It's
yeah,
fun to talk about.
Yeah, the thing behind it seems to be that it's, and we might have talked about this before. You've got people like the CIA, which is the intelligence branch, the private elected.
That actually is almost misdirected. They're the execution squad of Lucifer's army. But go ahead.
The story is that I hear that I really tend to believe is that you've got a couple different divisions within intelligence. So you can see this playing out. Okay, one is the military intelligence, which is taking an oath for the country, and I think this is what Q has even brought up. And then you've got the civilian side, the CIA, the people that were appointed. You got the appointees that were put in place, not serving in the military. So you've got two of these things going on that they're warring amongst each other, and that there was actually going to be a coup, or not a coup, excuse me, back when Barack Obama was president, because they saw the things that were going on against America. They said, no, we can't do that. We're going to do it the right way. And they actually went out and solicited Donald Trump.
There wouldn't surprise me. We got to close this out. I know with certainty through, let's just call them my sources, that there is a war inside of the FBI. Mm-hmm. Remember, this is good against evil. It's not all the bad guys work at Spectre. Okay, get that out of your mind. Some of them are in the CIA. Most of those people are good. Some are in the FBI. Most of those people are good. This is good versus evil. Jesus told us this was going to be happening. He has no promises about a life of plenty here on earth. His promise is, if you believe in me, you're not going to the place I made for the fallen angels, the ones that we're up against. Read Ephesians 6:12. No, I'm sorry, don't read it. Study it. That's a little shortcut to figuring out what it is we're really up against. And at the end of the day, there are many ways to find God, but there is one path out of here. His name is Jesus Christ. He is who he said he is. And your belief on that statement determines your eternal outcome. And we'll leave it at that. See you guys next week.
We'll be back next week.